The valley below Mount Tabor is full of iron. 900 chariots, the most advanced military technology of the ancient world, are arranged across the Jezreel plain. Their horses stamp the dry earth. Their axles catch the afternoon light. For 20 years, this is what has kept a people afraid. This is why the roads have gone quiet, why the villages have pulled inward, why no one travels in the open anymore. On the ridge above, a general named Barak looks down at the army he has been ordered to fight. He has 10,000 men, foot soldiers, no chariots, no iron. But he has brought someone else. A woman is standing with him on that ridge. A woman who told him to come here. A woman who told him this is the day the Lord delivers Sisera into your hand. Her name is Deborah, and she is about to be right. This is Bible Stories Unearthed, where we retell the narratives of Scripture alongside the history, archaeology, and ancient world that give them their full weight. Today, a prophet, a judge, and a military commander, and the ancient song she left behind that may be among the oldest words in the entire Bible. The events of Judges 4 and 5 take place in Iron Age I Canaan, roughly the 12th and 11th centuries BC, a period of extraordinary disruption across the entire Eastern Mediterranean. The great Bronze Age empires had collapsed. Egypt had pulled back from its Canaanite territories. The Hittite Empire in the north was gone. City-states across the region were fragmenting under pressure from migrations, conflict, and the breakdown of the long-distance trade networks that had sustained them. Into this vacuum came waves of new peoples, new settlements, and new political realities. The dominant power in northern Canaan, according to the text, was Jabin, identified as King of Canaan, reigning at Hazor. For centuries, Hazor had been among the most strategically important cities in the ancient Near East, and its name carried weight across the region. His military commander, Sisera, controlled the Jezreel Valley with forces built around iron-fitted war chariots, mobile, shock-force weapons ideally suited to the flat ground of the northern plains. Against this, the Israelite tribal communities of Naphtali, Zebulun, Ephraim, and their neighbors were not a unified national state. They were loose confederations, bound by covenant and kinship, not by a standing army or a central government. When a crisis came, leadership emerged from within the community, and it could emerge from anywhere. That is the world Deborah inhabited, and it is the world she helped reshape. The text of Judges 4 introduces Deborah with an unusual directness. She is the wife of Lapidoth, though it is worth noting that the Hebrew word Lapidoth means torches or flames, which has led some scholars to wonder whether this is a personal name or a descriptor. The text does not explain. She is a prophetess. She is judging Israel. And she is doing it from a specific named location, the Palm of Deborah, between the towns of Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, where people come to have their disputes settled. She is not a general yet. She is an administrator, a legal authority, a spiritual voice. People come to her from across the region. She listens. She pronounces. That is what the text shows her doing before the war begins. Then she summons Barak. The message Deborah delivers to Barak, son of Abinoam, is not an invitation. It carries the full weight of prophetic command. She tells him that the Lord, the God of Israel, has given him his orders. Take 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and move to Mount Tabor. The Lord will draw Sisera to the Kishon River, and he will deliver Sisera into Barak's hand." Barak's response is striking. He says, "If you go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go." This has sometimes been read as weakness or cowardice. That reading deserves some care. Barak is a military commander. He knows what he is being asked to do, whatever his precise motivation, whether it is doubt or a genuine belief that the prophetic authority must be physically present to guarantee the promised outcome. What he is saying is that he will not commit his men without the source of that promise standing beside him. He needs Deborah there. She agrees to go, but she responds with a prophecy that cuts cleanly across his condition. "The road you are taking will not lead to your glory," she tells him, "because the Lord will give Sisera into the hand of a woman." Barak presumably assumed she meant herself. The battle, when it comes, is sudden and absolute. Deborah gives the word, "Go. This is the day. The Lord has gone out before you." Barak descends from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men. And then something happens to Sisera's chariots. The text of Judges 4 says, "The Lord threw Sisera and all his chariots and his entire army into panic before Barak. Sisera abandoned his chariot and fled on foot. His entire army fell. Not one was left." The Song of Deborah offers a detail the prose account implies, but does not fully explain. The stars, it says, fought against Sisera from their courses. The ancient Kishon River swept his forces away. The geography here is significant. The Jezreel Valley, the plain that spreads below Mount Tabor, is low-lying ground cut through by the Kishon, a river that floods seasonally and can turn firm valley floor into thick, churned mud with surprising speed. Iron-fitted war chariots on soft, waterlogged ground are not weapons, they are traps. If the Kishon rose that day, and the song seems to say it did, those 900 chariots would not have been an advantage. They would have been a catastrophe for the men inside them. Sisera fled north on foot. He came to the tent of a woman named Jael. Jael was the wife of Heber the Kenite, a man whose clan had separated from the main body of the Kenite people and pitched their tents in the north, near Kedesh. The text makes a point of noting that there was peace between Heber's household and Jabin king of Hazor. Sisera knew this. Running for his life, with Barak's forces somewhere behind him, he came to that tent because he believed it was safe. Jael came out to meet him. She invited him in. She covered him with a rug. He asked for water. She gave him milk, richer, heavier, the kind of thing that settles a man's body when he is running on adrenaline and fear. He asked her to stand at the entrance and deny he was there if anyone came asking. He fell asleep. What Jael did next violated one of the most foundational obligations of the ancient world. In the cultures of the ancient Near East, to receive a guest, to shelter them, to feed them, to cover them, was a sacred bond. It was not etiquette. It was a law older than any king's decree. You did not harm a man who had eaten in your tent. Everyone in that world understood this without being told. But Jael moved. In a nomadic camp, the driving of tent pegs was women's work. Her hands knew the weight of the hammer exactly. She took the peg and the hammer, moved to where the general lay sleeping. and drove the peg through his temple into the ground below. When Barak arrived, still in pursuit, Jael walked out to meet him. "Come," she said, "I will show you the man you are looking for." Deborah's prophecy had been fulfilled with precision. The honor had not gone to Barak. It went to a woman, not the woman who had stood on the ridge with him, a different woman entirely, one who had no part in the plan, who made a solitary decision inside her own tent, who acted on her own terms for her own reasons. The book of Judges closes its account of the battle with a quiet note. The hand of Israel pressed harder against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed him. Then it gives us the song. The Song of Deborah in Judges 5 is, by most scholarly assessment, one of the oldest surviving texts in the entire Hebrew Bible. Its vocabulary, its verb forms, its poetic devices, these show features of very early Hebrew that biblical linguists associate with composition in or close to the period it describes, not with later reworking. When we read the Song of Deborah, we may be reading something set down in some form, within living memory of the events themselves. The song is not a tidied-up celebration. It names the tribes that did not come. Reuben deliberated but stayed home. Dan lingered by his ships. Asher sat on the seacoast. This is a victory song that also contains a reckoning, a public record of who showed up and who did not. And then it ends somewhere no one expects, not with Barak's glory or with Deborah's triumph. The final verses shift the eye far from the Kishon River, to a window in a distant house, a woman looking down through a carved lattice at an empty road. It is Sisera's mother. She is wondering why his chariot is so late. Her attendants cluster around her with reassurances, each one more specific than the last. He is dividing the spoil. There are captive girls. There will be fine embroidered cloth. The song never corrects them. It ends there, the mother still at the window, the comfortable explanation still hanging in the air, and the reader already knowing what she does not. The historical world behind Deborah's story has been illuminated, and in some places genuinely complicated, by what archaeology has found. Excavations at Tel Hazor, first conducted systematically by Yigael Yahdin in the 1950s and continued under Amnon Bentor's direction since 1990, have revealed dramatic evidence of a violent destruction at the end of the Late Bronze Age. Burned buildings, smashed cult statues, a great city laid waste. That destruction is dated by archaeologists to roughly the 13th or early 12th century BC. This creates an archaeological puzzle that scholars continue to work through. That date appears to fall before the Iron Age I period in which Deborah's story is set. The Iron Age I levels at Hazor show an occupation dramatically reduced in scale from the Bronze Age city, smaller, less fortified, a fragment of what Hazor had been. Hazor's role in the Deborah narrative as the seat of a powerful king with a chariot army does not map straightforwardly onto what excavation shows the site looked like at that time. Scholars have proposed different readings of this gap, that Jabin's authority may have drawn on the lingering regional memory of Hazor's former power, that the name may have referred to a broader territory rather than the Tel itself, or that the events in Judges 4 and 5 involve historical threads the text draws together from different periods. None of these proposals has achieved consensus. The question remains open, and honest engagement with the text requires acknowledging it. Sisera himself presents his own set of puzzles. His base, Harosheth Hagoyim, translates roughly as the smithy of the nations, or the forest of the nations, a name that many scholars consider a descriptive term for a region or territory rather than an identifiable city. No site has been confirmed with certainty as its location. More strikingly, Sisera's name is not Semitic in origin, which has led to scholarly proposals that he was a commander or mercenary connected to the Sea Peoples, the migrant warrior groups entering Canaan from across the sea during this same period of upheaval, known to have deployed chariot forces. This remains a hypothesis rather than a confirmed identification. On the Song of Deborah, the scholarly case for antiquity is strong. Detailed linguistic analyses have identified archaic features, verb forms, poetic structures, vocabulary, that align the composition with early Iron Age Hebrew. This does not mean the text has reached us unchanged across 3 millennia, but the evidence suggests it preserves genuinely ancient material, possibly the earliest layer of poetry in the Hebrew canon. Women holding positions of spiritual and judicial authority in the ancient Near East were uncommon but not unknown. Prophetic women appear in Mesopotamian records. The Hebrew Bible records other female prophets: Miriam in Exodus, Huldah in 2 Kings. What makes Deborah exceptional is the combination: civil judge, prophet, and active participant in a military campaign, all in one figure, presented by the text without justification or apology. Deborah's story has been consistently undertold, and that undertelling reveals something in itself. The Book of Judges does not explain her. It does not defend her authority or address the question of whether a woman should hold it. The objections came later, imported from outside the text, shaped by centuries of interpretation that the text itself never invited. What the text does give us is a woman who read the moment she was in and stepped into it without hesitation. When Barak placed a condition on his own obedience, she did not argue or negotiate. She simply said, "I will go." And then there is Jael, who appears in no plan, who is mentioned in no strategy, who was bound by hospitality laws that made what she did almost unthinkable, and who ended the war anyway. 2 women, one working in full public authority, adjudicating disputes and directing armies, one working alone, inside a tent, in the dark. Both of them changed what happened. Both of them are in the song. 3,000 years later, the question the Song of Deborah keeps asking has not gone away. When the moment arrives and no one is coming to do it for you, what do you do? Thank you for being here. This story has been told. Subscribe and return to Bible Stories Unearthed. The book is open. Let's unearth more.